Okay, let's begin. I believe we ended on module 2.2. Verse Evam Buddhe Param Buddva Samstabhyatmanamatmana Jahishatrum Mahabaho Kama Rupam Durasadham. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, Almighty Armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer the sensational enemy known as lust. So we're working on understanding kama, right? Icha, kama, same thing. Icha is the desire, the will of the jivatma, the spiritual being. When that icha is covered by or contaminated by ahankar and the Irishadvargas, then it manifests in this world as kama, desire for the material senses, mind, and intelligence to engage with their objects in this material world. All right, so that's kama. Kama resides in the five working senses, the five knowledge acquiring senses, mind, and intelligence. That's where kama resides, for lack of a better term. And we see in this verse, Krishna says, in order to deal with this kama, Krishna describes it as an insatiable enemy. It burns like fire. It never ends. It's what it does. But how to deal with it, Krishna recommends buddhva or buddhve. In other words, buddhi yoga. Right? We also know about buddhi yoga. Buddhi yoga is a yoga founded by Krishna. Krishna was the first person to coin the term buddhi yoga in Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, his definition of buddhi yoga is what we go by. Buddhi means intelligence. Buddhi yoga and jnana yoga are often conflated and confused. They are two different yoga systems. The reason why they're conflated or confused is because buddhi means intelligence, jnana means knowledge, so naturally they're both confused. Even Arjuna confused the two. Jnana yoga, the process of jnana yoga is different from the process of buddhi yoga. The outcome of jnana yoga is different from the outcome of buddhi yoga. So the process of jnana yoga is meditation. Meditation upon spiritual principles, meditation upon one's how one applies a spiritual principle, right? There's like you engage in a particular practice of sadhana. Say it's reading the scripture. What you read, you meditate upon it. Through that meditation, that internal realization, then you come to your realization of oneness with the Supreme. You, or myself, and the Supreme, we are one qualitatively, spiritually. That's the process, meditation, the outcome, the realization of that oneness. Buddhi yoga, the process is love. Buddhi, the process is love, devotion, bhakti. The outcome, the realization is that, yes, we're qualitatively one, but I can also have a relationship with the Supreme, not just that we are qualitatively the same. Okay, any questions there? Also, always feel free to interject whenever you want. Okay, let's go on to the next module. What we're also going to do today is we're going to practice, spend a little time dissecting the Bhagavad Gita according to Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. That's actually how you unlock the Bhagavad Gita. When you understand Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha fully and completely, you take those four tools and you can unlock everything in the Bhagavad Gita. And it all begins to make practical, applicable sense. So let's go into the Next module, this module is 2.3. We're still dissecting karma. Very important we understand these things, right? So this verse is Shaknoti Haivaya Sotum Prak Sharira Vimokshanat Kama Krodhod Bhavandegam Sayukta Sasukhi Naraha. Krishna says, before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he or she is well situated and is happy in this world. This is the happiness formula given right there in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, we have karma, we have all these desires based on the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the 5 working senses, the mind and intelligence. We have this karma. It comes from Icha, which is an eternal attribute of the soul. So karma is not going anywhere. It's insatiable. It burns like fire. How do we deal with this karma in this world? So in order to remain in this world, be situated in this world, happy and satisfied, and able to actually make progress spiritually and personally, right? This is not just about spiritual progress because we live, right? We're dealing with the material mind and senses. So this is a practical instruction here, how to remain happy and well situated in this world despite all of these desires and this energy of karma ever present in our life, right? Krishna says tolerance, right? Now, it's not just tolerance in terms of restriction, invalidating, denial. Krishna's not talking about that, right? Krishna's already said buddhi yoga. But what Krishna's saying is you have to deal with it, not just to let the senses, let the mind, let the intelligence to follow our whims. We have to check. We have to master. Is a better word. I like to use the English word mastery. The English word mastery better describes what Krishna is talking about. It has the proper connotation to accurately describe what Krishna is saying. We have to master it, right? So remember, the origin of karma is Icha, right? That's the origin of karma. Karma exists in the material world, material mind, material senses, material intelligence, but its origin is Icha, the desire of the spirit soul, the will of the spirit soul, Jivatma. That's the origin. Its nature is that it's insatiable. It's always going to be there. Just like Icha is always a quality of the soul, Kama is always going to be there, right? It's the desire of the tongue to eat something. It's the desire of the eyes to watch a good movie. It's always going to be there. In fact, it should be there. If the eyes do not want to see something wonderful, that means you're blind. All right. Now, so the desire to see something palatable or taste something palatable, hear something pleasant, that desire should always be there because it indicates the health of the material body, the health of the mind, the health of the intelligence. So we don't want to negate that. We're not trying to shut it off. We're trying to master it. So its nature is that it's insatiable. And it manifests in the mind, senses, and intelligence. So that's a complete understanding of this karma. So the happiness formula Krishna gives is very simple. To master. We have to master karma. To indulge karma is not Krishna's recommendation. Because it's insatiable and the mind and the senses have no problem going off the deep end if we just try to indulge the energy that is karma. All right? Any questions on this module? Very good. Let's go on to the next. Next module is 2.4. Remember, interject whenever you want to. So this is the last verse on karma, the last verse of the Dashamrita. Dashamrita means 10 verses of the Gita, 10 nectarian verses of the Gita. Yuktahara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapnava bodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. One who is regulated in their habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. This is, Krishna gets really into the weeds here about practicing kama. About dealing with karma, because it's very important. Karma is the most powerful motivation, one of the most powerful motivations in this world, the desire for our senses to interact with the sense objects. It's the driver of just about everything. If we go back to the beginning of this section on karma, Arjuna asked the question, right? This is what begins this discussion of karma in the third chapter. Arjuna asks Krishna, my dear Krishna, why is it that someone who is intelligent, someone who is righteous, and Arjuna has this question because even his own brother Yudhishthir engaged in all kinds of silliness, even though Yudhishthir is Dharmaraj. Yudhishthir should know better. And even in Arjuna's own life. So Arjuna asks Krishna, why is it that someone who is struggling to be righteous, struggling to do the right thing, why do they engage in activities that are detrimental to themselves? And they engage in these activities, even though they know better, they engage in these activities as if they are engaged by force. Arjuna literally used that terminology, as if they're impelled, they're being forced to engage in activities that they know are detrimental to themselves. And Krishna said, karma. It's the principle of karma. Because there is not mastery of karma, we will engage in activities, we will make choices, do things that are detrimental both to our physical reality and our spiritual progress towards moksha. It is karma. So karma, understanding and mastering karma is essential. That is how we really engage spiritually with this world. That's where what do they call it? Where the rubber meets the road. The rubber of our spiritual reality, our spiritual aspirations meet our material reality through karma. Right? How we engage in this world with karma. That's where it all comes down to the practicality of spiritual life in our material reality through karma. So Krishna gets very much in the weeds here in this verse, regulated in our habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work. If we regulate, if we master these four things, we can mitigate. Very important word. Krishna says mitigate. We can lessen all the material pains, right? And Krishna says the yoga process is the best way for gaining that mastery. Yoga bhavati dukkha. Yoga is the best way for mastering karma. So there are a few things we have to, ideas, concepts we have to pick apart here. Happiness. Happiness can be categorized into two, sukha and ananda. Sukha is happiness or pleasure that we get from our material mind, senses, and intelligence. Well, the mind and intelligence are material. The mind and intelligence is not spiritual. It's material. It's a material element. This is going back to Sankhya philosophy. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of Sankhya philosophy, but I think I mentioned this earlier. A basic understanding of Sankhya philosophy is essential for unlocking the keys to the Bhagavad Gita. Without knowing some amount of Sankhya, the Bhagavad Gita makes no sense. So right now we're going to go into a little bit of Sankhya philosophy. The material mind and senses, they're material elements. They're its own category. So when the mind, senses, and intelligence, when they are titillated, when they are activated, one experiences pleasure or pain, right? You cut the body, you experience pain. It's the material body, right? You eat something nice, you experience pleasure. You hear something you don't like, you experience distress. Sukha, dukkha. So sukha is happiness on the material level. Then you have ananda. Ananda is a pleasure experienced when we have achieved complete freedom from the influences of the Irishadvangas. Right? Ananda is a pleasure that experienced on the soul level. Whether you have we cannot, to experience Ananda is very difficult to describe because we're in a material body. But the closest we can come to understanding Ananda is in a meditation when you sit and you can get to a state in a meditation within the first 3 to 5 minutes where you can actually experience not the separation of oneself from the body, but you can experience the body is no longer, what's the word? Experiencing any inputs, right? You can detach yourself from, that's what the word is. You can detach yourself from what your body is experiencing. If there's some smells in the room, if there's some sounds, if you're slightly uncomfortable the way you're sitting, within about 3 to 5 minutes, you can actually detach yourself from the experiences of the body. In that slight separation between what the body is experiencing and your personal existence, in that space, what you experience in that space is the closest description we can understand what Ananda is. So it doesn't mean you negate, you do not experience, you do not feel or understand what the body is going through, but your existence is you'll experience a slight distance, if you will, between yourself and the experience of what your body is going through. That's the best way we can talk about the experience of Ananda without having to experience it ourselves. That experience is the beginning of where Ananda can be experienced. From there, the satisfaction, the contentment, the pleasure derived from that experience, that is touching on Ananda. All right. So these are two completely different experiences. When we're eating our best meal, and that space where we can experience our existence separate from, not disconnected. I'm not disconnected, just separate. There's a slight distance, a slight pause, a slight space between what we're experiencing and our existence. Again, I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I will always say it. The actual best description of Ananda I have come across that is non-philosophical in nature, because sometimes you read the Bhagavad Gita, you read the Bhagavad Gita, you read the Quran, Upanishads and everything, and they give a very philosophical definition definition, if you will, of Ananda. And it's very hard to describe because we're talking about an experience beyond our material existence. So it is very difficult to describe. But the best description of Ananda was actually by Viktor Frankl in his book, In Search of Meaning. It is the best English rendering of what Ananda is and how it can be experienced. Is by Viktor Frankl in his book, In Search of Meaning. So I do recommend you get that book and always keep it on your bookshelf. Okay, let's carry on. So this is the difference between Sukha and Ananda. Sukha is oftentimes mistaken because we are so used to experiencing satisfaction through the senses that experiencing satisfaction and happiness that is not disconnected, that is detached from the experience of our body, it's easy to achieve, but we're not always used to it. It's not like you can really experience it within 3 to 5 minutes of a meditation process. I'm sure some of you have gone through this experience. It's not difficult to experience. It's, in fact, the constitutional nature of the soul. It's just that in our society, we have not been taught to do that. That's the whole purpose of Gurukula, right? From a very young age, learn how to sit in the constitutional nature of our spiritual being, and then exist in the world around us, right? The Shastras talk about being a swan on water. You float on water, but you don't become wet. All right. It's not a difficult thing to achieve. It's just that we've gone through life not from the very beginning of life until now, not even knowing there is a spiritual reality for most of the modern world. Many of us, we've had the good luck of growing up in spiritually attuned households, so we know that there is a spiritual reality. But for the most part, we certainly haven't been able to practice that as much as we possibly could. Okay, so let's move on. So now we know the difference between Sukha and Ananda, and it's not difficult to experience Ananda. It can be done with guided meditation, and once you know how to do it, you can enter that state almost instantaneously. It is not a difficult state to experience. So there's 3 other concepts we have to dissect and pull apart because they'll continue to come up. Excuse me. Raga or Sangha. We talk about attachment, detachment. So this raga, sangha are the Sanskrit words which means attachment, right? The yearning to experience, right? There's a desire to experience happiness and we become attached, right? No, it's my cell phone. I experience satisfaction with my cell phone. I therefore have an attachment to it because it gives me sukha. It gives me material pleasure and material happiness. So therefore I am attached. I want connection with my cell phone. So that yearning for, that's raga, that is sangha. Then there is vairagya, detachment, right? Detachment from the cell phone. Now, these raga and vairagya, attachment and detachment, are concepts. They are belief systems, is the word I'm looking for. They are belief systems. It is a belief that causes me to have an attachment. That's all. An attachment is just a belief that this is a cause of my happiness, my sukha, therefore I must always make sure I have this, right? Vairagya is the realization that, okay, this is necessary for life. It gives some pleasure. It gives sukha. It gives sukha, absolutely. But we understand that sukha is material in nature. Sukha is not ananda. That's what vairagya is. Vairagya is a recognition that this phone gives sukha, not ananda. I can experience ananda without my cell phone. I do not need a cell phone to experience ananda. That realization is vairagya. So it's a belief system. No, I won't go there. That's going off the deep end. So it's very important we understand the difference between attachment, raga, and vairagya. Vairagya is a recognition, raga, attachment, is a recognition that my cell phone or anything around in this material reality gives sukha, gives material satisfaction of my material mind, senses, and so on. And I want to hold on to it. I want to keep it. Raga. Vairagya is the belief that, again, vairagya is not renunciation. We're not talking about sannyas. We're talking about a belief system. Sannyas is a physical, or can be, a physical removal or disconnection with something. We're not talking about renunciation. Did we talk about renunciation before? Manasa sannyasa and karma sannyasa? I did speak about that before. I don't know if it was to this group or another group. Anyways, we're not going to go down the road of sannyas at the moment. We're right now just talking about a belief system. Raga, this gives me satisfaction on a material level. Vairagya is that while it gives me satisfaction on a material level, it is not necessary for me to experience ananda. It may be necessary for me to experience sukha. Yes, that's fine. It's necessary for me to experience sukha. So we're not in denial. We're not giving up. This is not false renunciation. Krishna talks about that. No, we recognize it is necessary to experience sukha. Vairagya is a belief system, the belief system that it's not necessary to experience ananda. I can experience ananda without this. And that ananda is a natural attribute, is an inherent attribute of the fact that I'm a spirit being. Okay? And then there is asakti. Now, just like there is, use a cell phone again, there is a yearning for me to experience sukha with this cell phone, there is also a yearning to experience ananda. Right? Let's go back to kama. Kama is the material manifestation of ichcha, of the spirit being. I'm a spirit being. I have desires, that ichcha, that will, that manifests through ahankar as kama. Similarly, this idea of attachment, detachment, that also asakti is different from ichcha. Ichcha, we'll use the word will for ichcha. Asakti means attachment. We want to have association with, connection with. So it's a slight difference in the term asakti than ichcha. But this asakti energy is the desire, the yearning for the attachment to be with ananda, to experience and always be in existence with ananda, experiencing ananda. That is asakti. Asakti also means attachment. So there is attachment and detachment based on a belief system. I need this. I believe that I need this for sukha. This is necessary for my sukha. That's a belief. The countering belief is I do not need this for ananda. So this is a belief system, raga, vairagya. It's just belief. Asakti is once we have begun to experience ananda, then there is this continued desire to remain in that experience of ananda. That is asakti. Now, it's very important that as we go through our spiritual development, do not try to dissect, am I experiencing asakti now or not? These are simply philosophical differentiations. That's all they are. Just so that we know that there is two types of existence. There is an existence that's completely conditional and material in nature, but that there's also a spiritual reality. I like Chardin, I think he was a French philosopher, who says, we are not material beings trying to have a spiritual experience. It's the other way around. We are spiritual beings going through a material experience. So these detailed Sanskrit terms, and I think the Vedas do the best at describing two different realities. What we sometimes often get lost in is we try to diagnose, I would say prematurely, what we are experiencing. Is this raga? Is this vairagya? Is this asakti? Don't worry about that. The reason why we're learning these terms is so we have the recognition that there are differences. There's a material reality and our spiritual reality. And the more we become attuned spiritually, these differences will naturally begin to manifest. So what I'm saying is, do not try to pre-diagnose, do not try to prematurely try to assign, am I feeling this, am I feeling that? You can get completely lost in trying to dissect one or the other in terms of what you're going through. Krishna doesn't recommend to Arjuna to try to dissect all these things. He gives all this knowledge, but then he just tells Krishna, practice buddhi yoga. And as you mature in buddhi yoga, these things will manifest of their own. You do not have to spend time trying to self-diagnose what you're going through. It will become a natural experience. It'll become it'll become an automatic recognition between one and the other as you go through life. Right? He tells Arjuna, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna goes to war. Arjuna has a hard time. This is all the questions of the Bhagavad Gita we see is Arjuna trying to dissect all of this stuff Krishna is trying to give to him. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, towards the end, Krishna then just continues to say, engage in yoga, it'll come, just engage in yoga. Yes, there are differences. The way you come to manifest and realize these differences is to engage in yoga. The first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is tussling with the terminology. And the terminology is necessary so that as we mature, we're able to describe what we're going through, what we're experiencing. But it has to be experiential. That's the key. And the only way to get there is through the practice of yoga. The way Krishna describes yoga, not the way yoga is packaged in the modern day, and it's nothing luluman, and that's not yoga. That's a physical exercise. Fine. We're talking about the way Krishna, the way Sanatana Dharma gave yoga. That's what Krishna is talking about. All right. Anything to share? All right. Remember, interject as needed. All right. We'll go on to the next module. This was 2.4. Close that and go on to module 3.2. So we have 2 more modules, 3.1 and 3.2. Let's go on to 3.1. Now we'll go into moksha. And this is Dashamarita Gita, shloka number 8. Karma jam buddhi yuktahi, there's that word again, buddhi yukta, right? Buddhi yoga. Karma jam buddhi yuktahi, phalam tyaktva manishinaha, janma bandha vinirmukta, padam gacchantyanamayan. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord. That's the English translation. Buddhi yukta. By thus engaging in buddhi yoga, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle, this is samsara, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain to the state beyond material miseries. All right? Janma bandha vinir mukta, liberation from birth and death, that cycle, by buddhi yoga. So we're getting into moksha here. So we know, we've gone over the 2 types of moksha, right? There is Jivan Mukti, Videha Mukti. Jivan Mukti is moksha, liberation from the Arishad Vargas, mastery of the Arishad Vargas, mastery of Kam, Krodh, so on and so forth. In this life, in this body, right here, mastery of Kama and everything that follows. That is Jivan Mukti. And then, with that lifestyle, as we continue to progress spiritually, at the end of this life, we achieve Videha Mukti. Videha means of the body. Liberation from, that's what Krishna is talking about here, Janma Bandha. We're liberated from this repeated cycle of samsara, birth and death. Remember this wheel of samsara, the engine of this wheel is karma. Right? Actions and reactions. We do something, we have to then live the consequences of it, right? So in Videha Mukti, we break the cycle because, what does Krishna say here? By engaging in buddhi yoga, we free ourselves from the results of work. We free ourselves from the karmic bond. Karma jam buddhi yuktahi, from the karmic reactions of work. We free ourselves of that energy of karma and thus break the cycle, and videha, mukti, is achieved. Anything to share or to discuss on that regard? Fairly straightforward, very straightforward. All right, let's go into the next module, 3.2, also relating to moksha. All right, Krishna says here, this is Dashamrita Gita number 9, shloka number 9. Yonta sukonta aramas tatantar jyotir evayaha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto higachiti. One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic or yogi. That person is liberated in the Supreme, and they ultimately attain the Supreme. So, we talked about the words sukha and ananda, right? Sukha is happiness based on the material mind and senses. Ananda is the experience of our spiritual selves. So sometimes you're going to see this word or hear this word sukha used in relation to ananda. And this is one example, right? Krishna says, anta sukha, happiness within. He's talking, in that case, anta sukha means ananda. You'll also hear a term called Brahma Sukha, which means spiritual happiness. So Brahma Sukha is Ananda. So sometimes you hear the word Sukha in relation to Ananda. You just have to be able to recognize that, right? But the word Sukha on its own, for the most part, in Sankhya philosophy, means happiness relating to the material body, unless there is a qualifier. Anta qualifies sukha, talking about internal happiness, that's ananda. Brahma qualifies sukha, Krishna is talking about internal happiness, ananda. So it's just a point we have to share so that in future, when you're reading scriptures and you see sukha, learn to see the qualifiers that differentiate between one and the other. So Krishna is saying, anta sukha, happiness that is within. Anta arama, pleasure that comes from within, and anta jyoti, which means the knowledge that comes from that experience of our spiritual reality. Some other terms, very, very important, because you're going to hear and read them in other spiritual texts. And it's also something we need to learn in relation to Buddhism. 3 terms: Jiva Bhuta, Brahma Bhuta, and Brahma Nirvana. Jiva Bhuta, that's you and I. Our spirit, we are Jiva, we're living entities, and that's also birds, plants, animals. We are spirit beings. We're called Jiva Bhuta. But we're called Jiva Bhuta because we have not mastered the Arisha Dwargas. We have not achieved Jivan Mukti, right? So when a living entity, whether in a human body or an animal body, has not achieved Jivan Mukti, Videha Mukti, obviously not Videha, when we have not achieved mastery of the Arisha Dwargas, then we are described as Jiva Bhuta, living entities under material conditioning of the Arisha Dwargas. When through Buddhi Yoga, through spiritual development, when we have achieved Jivan Mukti, when we have mastered the Arisha Dwargas, and we have realized our spiritual state, then that living entity, then we are called Brahma Bhuta. All right, so there's a difference there. Jiva Bhuta, conditioned, not having achieved Jivan Mukti, having gone through the yoga process, come to Jivan Mukti and mastery the Arisha Dwargas, then we are described as Brahma Bhuta. That state of existence is Brahma Bhuta. So these are 2 states of existence: conditioned as Jiva Bhuta, spiritually realized Brahma Bhuta. The third term is Brahma Nirvana. Brahma Nirvana is similar but different. And the difference between Brahma Bhuta and Brahma Nirvana, and we have to use, obviously, what we are familiar with. So I'm going to state something and then I'm going to contradict it. Brahma Nirvana, think of a location. Brahma Nirvana as a place. So Brahma Bhuta is the state of being spiritually realized. Brahma Nirvana is the place where the spiritually realized individuals reside, for lack of a better term, right? So Brahma Nirvana is more about the description of a place, a locale. Brahma Bhuta is the individual, all right? Now I'm going to contradict that because Brahma Nirvana is everywhere. This is why this is why even Krishna tells Arjuna, let's not get so lost. We have to learn the terminology just so that we understand that there's different realities. But at the same time, don't recognize that there has to be experience. The problem that arises in spiritual circles is that we get so caught up in terms and we spend lectures and courses and all tracing terms. The terms become fully understood only through experience. Okay? So we understand the terms, we learn the terms just so that we know basic differences, but the key is engaging in yoga, because it is only through the engagement do we experience, that's what that is, which is why you can read the Bhagavad Gita today, engage in yoga, come back 10 years later, and it's almost like you're reading a completely different book, because your experience in the process of yoga has matured you, has sent you so far in progress spiritually that when you come back to reading the Bhagavad Gita, it's almost as if you're reading an entirely different book, because your experience has brought the book Antarjyoti, has brought it to light. All right. So we're learning these terms just so that we have a philosophical differentiation between the two. Brahma Bhuta is the state of spiritual realization in this life, in this world, in this body. Brahma Nirvana is, for lack of a better term, a location where we go after we leave this body. All right. It's the place. And then we can contradict it. Brahma Nirvana is everywhere. In fact, you do not have to leave the material body to be situated in Brahma Nirvana. They're contradictory. Yes, they are. Don't worry about it. Just as Krishna tells Arjuna, practice yoga, you'll experience it. Let's not make the mistake of the vast majority of spiritualists and get caught in these definitions of terms without experiencing the difference between the two. All right? We must, through experience, it all becomes crystal clear. Crystal clear. Okay, anything to share at this moment? I'm not saying don't ask questions about these things, but I'm just saying the real knowledge will come through experience. Because a lot of the a lot of the concepts are seemingly either related or contradictory. It's the experience that's going to really pull these things apart for you. All right, anything to share? Okay, so what we're going to do now is we have 15 minutes. I'm going to pull up several verses of the Bhagavad Gita, because this is something we are having trouble with. The last two tests, some of you were unable to do because you did not understand the task. So I'm going to pull up the Bhagavad Gita, and we're going to practice doing this together. Give me just a moment. The test was for chapter 3. I'll pull up chapter 3, and then I'll share my screen. Give me a moment. Stop it. There we go. Oh, I see there's a question in the chat. Yes, yes. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. It's not, we think that spiritual realization is this, it's like we are naturally able to, we are spiritual beings in a material reality. We've been so far removed. It's like a fish out of water. Once you put a fish in water, it just swims. We are spiritual beings in a material reality. We have just been so far removed from our spiritual nature that we make spiritual life this kind of esoteric, mystical reality that is really not the case. All right, let me pull this up. Okay, I'm hoping you all can see my screen. So we're going to quickly recap the Purusharthas, because the Purusharthas is what really opens up the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. It gives us an understanding of what Krishna is talking about and then how to apply it. That's the reason why it's so that's the reason why the applicable nature of the Bhagavad Gita is lost, because we don't come to the Bhagavad Gita with an understanding of Sankhya and an understanding of the Purusharthas. So this is really what this course is about, seeing the Bhagavad Gita so that we can use it. All right. So first, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, right? Dharma means the information we need to live a successful life. That's really what dharma, rules, regulations, all of the description of this material world, this reality we live in, so that we can function successfully in this world. And there are many different dharmas, right? Varnashram dharma, yuga dharma, this dharma, that dharma, varnashram, sadharana dharma, all different types of dharma. But we need to know that we can divide dharma into two: dharma of the material reality. Remember, kshetra, kshatragya, all of that. The dharma of information relating to kala, time, karma, activities. This chapter is karma yoga, and prakriti, material nature. So all of the knowledge, all the information about these three, how they interact, what's going on, and what they mean, and so on and so forth, how do we exist, all the dharmas relating to these three. And then you have dharmas relating to Ishvara, Jiva, the spiritual reality, right? Ishvara is spiritual, Jiva, we are spiritual. So the dharma relating to these spiritual nature and its interaction, right? That's Sanatan Dharma, right? Sanatan means eternal. Our spiritual existence is eternal. Our spirituality goes beyond the material body. So Sanatan Dharma, also sometimes called Jaiva Dharma. Jaiva means of Jiva, of the soul. So Sanatan Dharma, and then how all of this comes together. That's all that knowledge, all dharma. Right? So it's dharma, artha. What do we need to do in order to live a successful life? We need money. We need an occupation. Krishna makes this very clear. You have to work in this world. This is why Krishna does not negate. We think becoming spiritual means, to run to the forest. No, that's what Arjuna thought. The very first verse. Arjuna said, "Oh, Arjuna, okay, sure. Why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruits of work?" That's because in the previous chapter, Krishna said, Buddha yoga, Buddha yoga, Buddha yoga. And Arjuna thought he was supposed to go somewhere and learn something. No. In this world, you have to have a job, for crying out loud. In this world, you have to do something just to maintain your physical body. Artha. Then there, kama. Kama, we talked about this. We live in a world, we have material senses, and our 10 senses, knowledge acquiring, working senses, are constantly going after material sense objects. Without that, a healthy body, that's what a healthy body does. Constantly goes after the sense objects. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're designed to do. Material mind and intelligence, same thing. It's what they're designed to do, to interact, to get involved, to get into this material world and just enjoy it as much as possible. That's what the healthy material body is designed to do. There's a problem though. If we allow it to just run like a horse, you have a wild horse. You can do nothing with a wild horse. Karma. How do we deal with this? And then moksha. What's really the purpose? That's the purpose is moksha, freedom. Freedom is the purpose. The American Constitution got it right. Freedom, right? Freedom. In this body, in this world, in this reality, freedom from being controlled by the Adishad Dvargas. Freedom. And then once we die, freedom in the hereafter, beyond. That's the goal. Without freedom, we're a prisoner. You can enjoy nothing as a prisoner. Freedom. Okay, so now we know what these Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha is. Let's try to, we have a few minutes, let's dissect these Bhagavad Gita verses. So let's take the first one. Arjuna said, O Janardhan, O Keshana, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than work? So this particular question, what are some of of these four, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, what's coming up in this question? I'll share, but if you have some thoughts, feel free to interject and share. So Arjuna is talking about this ghastly warfare. Arjuna is talking about intelligence. He has a question about, you're saying buddhi, yet at the same time you're saying karma. You're saying buddhi, intelligence. You're saying karma. What's going on here? This particular question is a question about artha, right? This is an artha verse. Arjuna is confused. He's saying, you want me to go to war? That's Arjuna's occupation. He's a kshatriya, right? This is his dharma. You're telling me to go to war, but you're telling me intelligence is better, or I don't understand. The question he's having here is about, what do I do with my life? Am I supposed to do what I do to earn a living? Being a kshatriya is more than earning a living. It's not so much about, but in terms of engaging into his livelihood, this is what he does, right? But Krishna is saying he shouldn't do it. So then how do I live in this world? So this verse is an artha verse with a little bit of consideration of dharma, right? Because Arjuna's swadharma is a kshatriya. So it's an artha verse with a little questions about his swadharma. So you see how we can look at each verse in the Bhagavad Gita, and if we know what the verse is talking about, then it becomes applicable to our own reality. Now seeing Arjuna's questions, like that's actually a very good question. I have a job that it actually may not be part of my swadharma. Why am I engaged in this job that's not part of my swadharma? And what is buddhi yoga? How can that be a part of my work? This is a very powerful question if we think of it in those terms of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And again, if moksha is the ultimate goal of freedom, I mean, freedom is the ultimate goal of our existence and experience, how does that all tie in? So we see this understanding dharma, artha, kama, moksha really brings this question into our own reality. That's a very good question. What in terms of my job, is my job better or should I be doing something else? Let's go into the second verse. My intelligence, excuse me, what time is it? My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. This is really a moksha verse in terms of where Arjuna is going with his questions. In terms of what's most beneficial, that's the key right there. What is most beneficial? In terms of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, what is most beneficial is moksha. If it's not leading towards moksha, it's not beneficial. So this question is actually a moksha question. What is most beneficial to me? we know that which is most beneficial for us is freedom. If we're not free, it's not beneficial for us. So this is a moksha verse. Let's go on to the last. We'll do this. We'll do one more. Text number 3. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are 2 classes of men who try to realize," I'm sorry, this is blocking my view. 2 classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. So in this verse, this is a little muddled, not muddled. We have to explore it a little bit. So Krishna is saying here, I've already talked about this, and this he's going back to the 2nd chapter. He's talking about 2 types of yogi, the buddhi yogi and the jnana yogi. Remember we talked about the difference? And I think it's module 2.3. The difference between buddhi yoga, and jnana yoga. They're 2 completely different yogas, right? Very important. So in terms of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, in this particular verse, Krishna is saying, he's talking about, because the question is about what's most beneficial. In coming to answer that question, Krishna is saying, I've already talked about this, and we're really going back to dharma. This is a dharma verse, because remember, the foundation of dharma, I wouldn't say the most important, what is foundational in understanding as we build on dharma is svadharma, our intrinsic nature that is unique to us in this world, svadharma. So Krishna is saying, I've already described it in terms of 2 types of people. He's referring to 2 types of persons who have 2 particular types of svadharma, right? One person's svadharma, they're more empirical, philosophical, they're more geared towards the meditative side of spiritual development, and the other are more buddhi yoga side, more the process of bhakti yoga. So Krishna is talking about individual person's nature. So this is in that sense, is a verse about dharma, particularly svadharma. And then Krishna goes on from there. So do you see what I mean in the tests, those 2 tests, when I think the first test was the first 35 verses, and the second test was the remaining verses of the chapter? I want you to go through each. If you see on the test, you have it'll say 3.1. That is basically chapter 3. Here, chapter 3, point 1, point 2, point 3, and so on and so forth. So say, go to chapter 3.1, read the verse, and select whether the verse is a dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Now, also, you may, when I went through this, I went through it 30 some years ago. You may interpret each verse differently from the way I interpret it, or what I put as a qualifier, or as someone else puts, right? Someone might say, this is a dharma and artha. Someone say, no, it's a kama moksha. It's okay. It's perfectly okay. 2 things are happening, and 2 reasons why we're going through this exercise. It's so that we have a clear understanding and we're able to see what the Bhagavad Gita is like. Bhagavad Gita begins to reveal the practical nature, the practical teachings begin to come out, because when we use these 4 qualifiers, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. What it also does, and more importantly, is that you do this now with this chapter, come back in 5 years, after 5 years of your spiritual maturity, your spiritual development, and you've set this aside, which you've done, in this course. You come back and you do it again. Guess what? You will choose different things. It is fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating. And it's not because you were wrong the first time and you're right the second time. No. Remember, we talk about it is your experience that opens up the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita on a practical level more and more. So you put, this verse it's a dharma verse. You put that down today. I'm not going to say it was wrong or right. It's not about right or wrong. This is how you saw the verse in this time in your development. You're going to come back in 5 years and you'll recognize, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But it also says this. And that's because of your progress spiritually. Okay? All right, we'll end here. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Anything to share? Any questions? Oh, I wanted to mention about the Swadharma video I made, which didn't work out. I will put it together and repost it, the video on Swadharma. All right, anything else to share, or shall we end here? Okay. Saham Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunuktu Sahaviryam Karabhavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Vidvishabahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti